Welcome to this latest edition of the Real Deal Podcast. I'm your host, Cyril Gerald-Quinn, on this 9th of September 2019. As we discuss the world of sports and pop culture, right now the Saints are down in their home opener 14-3 to a feisty but still talented Houston Texan team. Led by, of course, Deshaun Watson, who has accounted for a couple of a touchdown run and a touchdown pass to DeAndre Hopkins. New Orleans is about a minute left in it as they're trying to cap. You have Denver and the Raiders, a game that doesn't have as much intrigue on it, of course, because the Raiders are, of course, missing receiver that never suited up for them, never played one game as an Oakland Raider, one official game as an Oakland Raider. As of course is Antonio Brown, and that's where we're going to begin. As Antonio Brown goes from being suspended, apologizing, to cut to on the New England Patriots in less than a weekend, basically. Um, I shouldn't say he wasn't never suspended. So let me correct that. Let me get that correct. He was not suspended, but you know, he was when he got into it with Mayock, the general manager of the Raiders. He was didn't practice that day. He wasn't available to the media that day. And you could say there are different perspectives you can look at this. There are different angles you can look at this. Two things can be true. I do believe that Antonio Brown orchestrated his way out of Oakland without some issues there mentally. There are some issues there in terms of him as a cancer to a team. The idea that just because he signed on to probably the best coacher, well, definitely the best coach in football, one of the best coaches in all the sports, and one of the strongest coaches. Excuse me, one of the strongest coaches in all the sports, and when New England Patriots does not guarantee that he will even make it through the season as a New England Patriot. Antonio Brown is about Antonio Brown. This behavior, again, is nothing new. You heard talk reports that for years that Pittsburgh was able to kind of hide this behavior because they did a lot of winning, uh, kept a lot of things under wraps, and you heard a lot of people. I heard a few people who were champion Mike Tomlin and giving Mike Tomlin credit, putting up with Antonio Brown. Like Mike Tomlin is one of the reasons why Antonio Brown acts like this because he enabled him for the better part of his career. So Mike Tomlin put up with this because Antonio Brown was constantly putting up 100 catch seasons, over the course of his career from 2013 up until last year, arguably the best, from a number standpoint, the most productive receiver in all of football. But they never went to a Super Bowl. All that production didn't mean anything because they never even made it to a Super Bowl during the Antonio Brown, Le'Veon Bell era of those players who were putting up these gaudy numbers that never equated to a championship, let alone a Super Bowl appearance. So I don't give Tomlin any credit whatsoever for putting up with enabled and Antonio Brown. But the onus of all this has to be on Antonio Brown. I can't even blame the Raiders. The Raiders did everything they could possibly do. Kissed his ass, which wasn't smart. But when you're the Raiders, they don't have a championship culture. They haven't won a Super Bowl since the '80s. Okay, so those are at least two generations ago. When last time they won a Super Bowl, maybe in three generations ago, if you think a generation counts for every 10 years, that they even have been won a Super Bowl, haven't been to a Super Bowl since the 2002 season. Ironically, where John Gruden was the coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers that destroyed them in that Super Bowl 48-21. So I don't. I can't put this onus on the Raiders. I put this squarely on Antonio Brown. And again, I don't think that Antonio Brown is this mastermind that he orchestrated this from, you know, from when he was back in Pittsburgh. Like I'm gonna force a trade, and then I'm gonna get traded to the Raiders, and then I'm gonna just then I'm going to orchestrate my way out the Raiders and on the Patriots. I think this happened when he got to the Raiders. I think that it just got to a point to where, and you could look at reports that he was tracking, was consulting with social media outlets on experts on how to, basically how to embarrass his team to a point to where where he would trigger them to trade him, and it worked. With some of the stuff that he was posting on Instagram and on Instagram and on various platforms, various social media platforms. So he got what he did. But the bottom line is this is what people are not reporting enough. He signed a $30 million deal. He got $30 million in guaranteed money. Was supposed to get $30 million in guaranteed money with the Raiders. Okay, he gets only he signs a 1 year, $15 million deal with New England, $9 million in guaranteed money. They He only got $1 million of that from the Raiders. So instead of getting $30 million in guaranteed money, he only ends up getting $10 million. $1 million from the Raiders, $9 million from the Patriots. So I call that's called hustling backwards. So in essence, he lost $20 million of guaranteed money. Let's not forget about that. Okay, before we start calling him this mastermind, crazy like a fox. No, 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 no. Lost $20 million in guaranteed money. A team that will not put with Bill Belichick will cut Antonio Brown so fast. Like he will not put up with any, and the first sign of trouble, he will be gone off that team. That team has won championships. They don't need great receivers to win championships. They've proven that time and time again. They won a championship without Gronkowski. That team is the essence of proving that they don't need big name players to win championships. I don't blame New England for taking him on. They feel like they have a culture. They feel like it's a high reward, low uh, ordeal with picking up Brown. They feel like if it works out, then we have one of the best receiving cores in the league, and our offense is going to be humming. If it doesn't, we'll just cut them. And as you saw last night, we still, if everybody stays healthy, relatively healthy, we still can put up 30 points on any given in any given game. We still have Tom Brady, and our defense is improved, and they can and still have Bill Belichick. So they're still the best coach team in terms of the best at drawing up schemes, the best prepared team, the most disciplined team. They have everything going for them. Uh, they have everything going for them going into 2019 and 2019 so far. They do not need Antonio Brown to win another championship. Antonio Brown is a luxury, the absolute luxury for that football team. And again, Antonio Brown is the definite is he a lot of stuff a lot of stuff is just attention seeking. Antonio Brown is a definition of somebody who craves attention nonstop. Everything he said, everything that happened went to social media immediately, everything from the accident with his feet, from the hot air balloon that he came in on, from getting cut, from the phone call, the tape phone call with John Gruden, everything. Remember, this was a guy who once did a Facebook Live during a playoff game in Pittsburgh, not a playoff game. Okay, so this is nothing new. This is what Antonio Brown is. Antonio Brown is at a point, and it's very dangerous if you ever reach this point, whether you play sports or not, to where you feel like that you're so talented that you can't, like, you're invincible. Antonio Brown feels like he's invincible, like nothing can touch him. And that's how you end up out the NFL. It's how you end up on your ass. Now again, a lot of this, a lot of this, some of this, I should say, has been the culture that the NFL has cultivated in terms of how they treat guys who have great talent but who have low character or who constantly get in trouble off the field. Like I said, the NFL talent comes first in the NFL. Like you literally would have to like murder somebody to not have a job in the NFL if you're a talented player. Tyreek Hill just got an extension. Okay, 3-year extension. So he's going to have to be. It's going to get to. It's going to get to a point where no one will touch him. And again, I don't know. Even if the Patriots cut him, there'll be another team that picks him up. There'll be another team that picks him up. Even if the Patriots cut him. Let's say the Patriots cut him in October or something. I don't see him making through an entire year with the Patriots. I just don't see it. I don't care how much he likes Brady. I don't care how much. I don't care about the reports of he wants to, that he feels like the offense is, fits his skill set in terms of how they utilize small receivers. I just think he cannot stay out of his own way. I think he's a guy who really generally thinks that he's bigger than the franchise at this point in his career. So right now, again, Antonio, did Patriots didn't need him last night. We'll get to that game a little later on, but I don't blame the Patriots. I don't blame the Patriots at all. At all. If you have a championship culture, you see somebody like Golden State pick up DeMarcus Cousins. Now it didn't work out because Cousins couldn't stay healthy for the most part, but Cousins was minimum trouble. Didn't have any didn't do anything off the field, off the court, or basically, I thought when he was healthy, Cousins actually helped the team. So if you have a strong culture, a championship has a number of personalities from the general owner, general manager, star players down that can that can withstand that kind of ego. We saw it even going back to the '90s with Dennis Rodman getting picked up by the Bulls. Jordan, Pippen, Phil Jackson, Reinsdorf. Guy that that culture. Multiple, what 5 they had won 3 championships up until that point. Rodman, of course, helped them three-peat. But if you had that type of culture, if you had that type of culture, then a, a guy's talent, is worth the risk. But I I don't think it will make a difference. I can see him last. I don't think he makes it past October. I'll say October. I will give him middle. I'll give him middle October. I think September will be a honeymoon period. But I feel like he goes through 2 games where he catches only like 3 or 4 balls, 50 yards, has those type of games. He scores no touchdowns, and he's looking up other receivers are putting up big gaudy numbers, and he's saying, I should be, leading the league in receiving. I should be leading the league in touchdowns because he's all about his numbers. He is the definition of a guy. He's about his numbers. Team wins, good, but he wants to get his numbers before anything. The one thing I heard that just made zero sense to me was the Randy Moss comparison. Randy Moss, even on his worst day, did not act like Antonio Brown. On his worst day, he's not even a comparison. And even Teddy Bruschi brushed that off on Sunday on the Sunday Countdown show. He's like, please don't make that comparison. Randy Moss won. Randy Moss wanted to win. When Randy Moss was on the field, Randy Moss wanted to win football games. Period. Now he had mature moments. We noticed squirting the referee in a playoff game against the Rams. The whole straight cash home. Yeah. Listen, he could be a jerk, but nowhere, not even in the same stratosphere not even close to what Antonio Brown is and has become, or Odell Beckham and any of those guys. Not even close. I don't think he's even as bad as Terrell Owens was. Randy Moss wasn't destroying teams. So I think that comparison is just a ridiculous comparison. Now you want to say talent from the standpoint of them taking a risk in terms of this is the best guy that they've taken a risk on since at the receiver position since Randy Moss. That's one thing, but don't make the comparison of Randy Moss as far as the baggage that he had versus the baggage that Antonio Brown has right now. It's not even a comparison. Randy Moss actually suited up for the Raiders. Let's not forget that he did play. Now you know, he played at about half speed, but he did suit up for the Raiders and played. How many years did he play for the Raiders? Say 05, 06. Played 2 years with the Raiders. No, at half. No, again, he played at half speed, but again, the Raiders at that point, the Raiders were a joke. They were an absolute joke at that point. That was past that Super Bowl year. They had a good team from 90, from 01, from I want to say 2000 to 02. After that, map. And they weren't even a factor in those Randy Moss years. That team was a laughing stock with a terrible culture. So I don't make that comparison in regards to this, in regards to Moss and Brown. We'll go around the league. Week one, first full week of both the NFL and college together. Um, Chargers. We might as well begin with New England and Pittsburgh. Again, nothing new here. Pittsburgh continues to get dominated by New England every time they see them, especially in New England's game was basically over in the first quarter. Listen, I'm not going to overreact to this. I still think Pittsburgh will have a good year. I don't think they're a Super Bowl contender. I don't think they can get to the Super Bowl, but I think they'll be. I still like Pittsburgh in that division. I'm not overreacting to what Baltimore did against Miami, and you saw what happened with Cleveland. We'll get to that. But England is just has become like old Travelers in Washington Generals. Like they just can't beat them. They don't match. They just don't match up well with them. Tomlin, you know, seems like he gets dumber when he faces. I'm not even going to get on the fact that down 20-0, kicking a field goal. The game was over at that standpoint. You want to go make a big deal about that? Be my guest. The game was over and done at 20-0. There's no way they were coming back. I think now I can understand there being an overreaction when people are going to talk about no Le'Veon Bell, no Antonio Brown. Calm down. Pittsburgh is a much better team than what you saw tonight. That was New England stage fright. They are just New England is in their heads, no matter where they play at. Especially in prime time games, they just can't beat them. Now they beat them last year at Pittsburgh, but the money's for a playoff game or at New England, they cannot beat that team whatsoever. I was not impressed with Tom Brady last night. That's the underreported story. Underreported story. Brady did not play well. And the game, it didn't matter because the game got so far away that at that point, New England was just dictating play. And he made some throws that he had to make. But he bounced a couple throws as well. So I think that's one of the reasons why a guy who can make some plays on some balls that might not be thrown accurately, or they might want them to receive as strong as possible, considering to compensate for Brady's slippage, or projecting Brady might be slipping. At some point, listen, he's 42 years old. At some point, the wheels are going to fall off with Brady. We just don't know when. But at a certain point, the wheels are going to fall off. I didn't think he played particularly well last night, to be honest with you, but it didn't make a difference. Pittsburgh still got rolled by New England. Chargers over Indianapolis, 30-24. This was a very good game. Was extremely impressed with Indianapolis, losing their quarterback, to retirement right before the season start. They came, really took it to the Chargers, ran the ball down the Chargers' throats. Both of these teams are banged up. We know the Chargers had Melvin Gordon, no Derwin James. No Derwin James, but again, they still have Phillip Rivers, still have some nice weapons on the outside. Keenan Allen, again, impressive victory. Is one of the worst home fields in all of football for the Chargers last year. They played much better on the road. This was a very good game, giving Indianapolis a lot of credit for fighting. They come up short 30-24. I think Indianapolis is going to be. I don't think Indianapolis is going to make the playoffs, but I think they're not going to be awful this year. I could see them being. They could be 7-9, possibly 8-8. Brissett is not terrible. They have a great running game. They have a great They have a very good defense, especially defensive line. So I don't think Vinatieri missed a couple of kicks. I'm not going to overreact to that. He is 46 years old. So speaking of, at a certain point the wheels falling off. I mean, this guy's pushing 50. Missed a couple kicks. I don't expect that to be a recurring theme over the course of the season from him. He's without question arguably the greatest kicker of all time. Certainly a Hall of Famer. So give Indianapolis credit for fighting, but the Chargers come up with the win. Since the Rams over Carolina 30-27, the Rams do what they do best when they are at their best, as run the football. They had 166 yards of rushing. Didn't need a great day from Jared Goff. Got 97 yards out of Todd Gurley. Malcolm Brown had a nice day. Rams made a couple plays on defense. This game was a lot probably closer in score than it actually was. You never got a sense that Carolina was going to win this game, when it felt like the Rams were in control of this game basically from start to finish. Seattle over Cincinnati 21-20, very good game. Andy Dalton had probably a career type game. 35 completions, 418 yards, 2 touchdowns. Remember, no AJ Green. Seattle did enough just to get by. I really thought Cincinnati outplayed Seattle, to be honest with you. From the parts that I saw this game, Seattle was able to make enough plays, but Cincinnati easily could have won this game. But Seattle gets by in their home opener 21-20. Cleveland gets embarrassed by Tennessee 43-13. 3 interceptions for Baker Mayfield, 18 penalties for the Cleveland Browns. Odell Beckham had 71 yards receiving, but was not a major factor whatsoever. Cleveland, you know, the Browns are the Browns. You cannot sit up there and lose at home by 30 to the Tennessee Titans. Not in your home opener. Not if you're trying to make the playoffs. Not if you expect anyone to take you seriously. That was a pathetic. That was the worst performance of the day. Even worse than Miami, because Miami's not any good. Like, Miami's going to be worst team in football. We already knew that coming in. They're tanking, so I don't even count their performance. But the Cleveland performance was the worst performance of the day by far to me. They were embarrassed. They didn't look like ready to play. They, again, to come out, I expect Cleveland to be a team that they will be up and down. There'll be days where they look like a playoff team. There'll be days where they look like one of the worst teams in football. They have 7-9 written all over them. They have 7-9, 8-8 written all over them. This Cleveland team is not a playoff team. And I felt that way before yesterday afternoon, and nothing from yesterday afternoon certainly is not going to convince me otherwise that is going to compete for the division, let alone make the playoffs. Takes out Washington 32-27. At one point, Philadelphia was down 17-0 in the first half. Between the second and fourth quarter, they outscored the Skins 32-3. Wentz has a big day. Case Keenum had a nice day. I know he had some gaudy stats. 380 yards passing. Missed a big touchdown in the third quarter that should have been when he had a chance to really kind of put a halt to the Philadelphia momentum. The key to this game was Philadelphia's line of play. Philadelphia's defensive and offensive line took over this game in the third quarter. They ran the ball in the second half. They didn't. Philadelphia, the Washington defense couldn't touch Wentz in the second half, and the Washington running game was non-existent. Philadelphia outrushes Washington 123-28. no turnovers to Washington, but 12 penalties. Of course, it wouldn't be Washington without some nonsense. Adrian Peterson, for the first time in his career, the future Hall of Fame running back, was a healthy scratch, and to me, It makes zero sense for him to be a healthy scratch when Darius Geis is your starter. Like Darius Geis is not Melvin Gordon. He's not Ezekiel Elliott. He's not Todd Gurley. You can't tell me that you could not have used Adrian Peterson in that game yesterday. And if you don't believe that Adrian Peterson deserves reps with Geis as your starter, then cut him. Cut him. Why is he on the team? I don't get it. Like, why is he on the team? If he's a healthy scratch, I mean, you would think that's like on some disciplinarian type stuff. The Washington Redskins are not a good enough team to have Adrian Peterson as a healthy scratch. They're not. And again, it makes no sense having a guy of Adrian Peterson's ilk um, on the team if he's not going to play. Now, again, if you cut Adrian Peterson during the preseason, offseason, and brought in a younger running back or somebody off the scrap meet, okay. It happens in the NFL. Aging veterans get cut all the time, especially at the running back position. Would have no problem with it. But if he's not going to play, then why is he on the team? I mean, that's my question. I don't want to hear this nonsense about special teams, wanting to strengthen the special teams. Give me a break. Like, if he's on the team, he should play. There's no other reason for him not. There's no reason for him not to play if he's on the team. Dallas rolls the Giants 35-17. Big day out of Dak Prescott. 25 of 32, 405, 4 touchdowns. Daniel Jones made an appearance. It's only a matter of time. I thought Eli played well yesterday, to be honest with you. So he was not the problem whatsoever. That Giant defense just got shredded by the Cowboy offense. It's only a matter of time before Daniel Jones is starting. I would say even by at October, first week of October, at the latest, maybe even late September. I would not be surprised if week 3 Daniel Jones is starting. I really wouldn't. Kansas City rolls over Jacksonville 40-26. Very strange game. You had an injection. You had a couple of injuries. Nick Foles, is going to be out with a clavicle injury till like at least week 11. Gardner Minshew came in and just threw all over Kansas City. I mean, he was near perfect. I think he completed, just about almost 75 to 8% of his passes. Came in and played great. So Kansas City still has issues on the defense, but that offense is just unstoppable. Mahomes looked like he was about to break the record for most yards passing in the game. He had 300 yards at halftime. I thought, Kansas City basically took their foot off the throttle. Kansas City could have scored 60 points easily in that game. They really they really were moving up and down the field at will against Jacksonville. They took their foot off the throttle in that game. Mahomes could have easily broken 500 yards in that game, but Kansas City over Jacksonville 40-26. And again, you have some other scores: San Francisco 31, Tampa Bay 17. Jameis Winston doesn't seem to be long to be Tampa Bay's quarterback. And Baltimore rolls over Miami 59-10. Again, I am not overreacting to that game. Miami doesn't even look like an NFL team. I got to see Baltimore and Lamar Jackson against a real NFL defense, because Miami doesn't have one whatsoever. So, a good solid, and going back to Thursday night game, the Green Bay-Chicago game, that was an embarrassing offensive performance by Chicago. There's no way that you can have Mitchell Trubisky throw the ball 45 times in a one-possession game. There's no way he should throw the ball 45 times. Give Green Bay's defense a lot of credit. Their offense basically did next to nothing outside the Jimmy Graham touchdown catch from Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers, of course, does not turn over the ball, so give him credit from that standpoint. That Chicago defense is a legit top 3 defense. So, you felt like there was not going to be a lot of points in that game, but that was a tough watch on Thursday night. It really was. I mean, those two teams, that was a tough watch. Watching those two teams slug it out at 10-3. But the Chicago offense was embarrassing. Green Bay's defense has improved, but let's not make the Green Bay defense out to be the 2000 Ravens. They're not that good. Again, give Green Bay credit. It's basically the double whammy It's basically, that you win not only on the road, but you win a divisional game on the road. So that is a perfect way to start your season if you're the Packers, winning a divisional game on the road against a team that you're going to be competing for the division title, along also with the Minnesota Vikings. Kyler Murray, they give Kyler Murray a lot of credit, down 24-6. He had a huge fourth quarter against Detroit. And Detroit does what Detroit does. That's how you find ways to either lose the game or or tie a game, which they had no business not winning. Detroit Lions had no business not winning. Arizona could barely cross midfield before the fourth quarter. But again, you give Kyler Murray all the credit in the world. That is what big time quarterbacks do. You can be struggling for the first three quarters and go out there and have a big fourth quarter, in which he did. Had a couple of nice passes to Larry Fitzgerald, and made some plays in that fourth quarter, and he ended up tying in overtime. So you like what you saw out of him in terms of his first game in the fourth quarter. You had a bunch of big time performances from quarterbacks yesterday. 12 quarterbacks went over 300 yards. You had 13 quarterbacks with over a 100 rating, passer rating. So you had some guys out there putting up some gaudy numbers. Week one is always tricky. I don't overreact at all to week one, because teams are barely out of preseason. For most of these teams, this is preseason. The weather with the heat. You go out there, perfect example. Washington is rolling 17-0. Philadelphia wakes up and realizes who they are, which is a legit Super Bowl contender coming out the NFC. But overall, the cream rise to the top with some of the power of some of these big time teams, whether it's New England, the Rams, Philadelphia, Kansas City. Chargers are still pretty good. So the cream rose to the top yesterday for the most part. You didn't have that shocking upset to speak of. I mean, if you want to call Tennessee Cleveland upset, I wouldn't call it upset. I mean, it was more like an embarrassment from a standpoint. There's no way that the Cleveland Browns should lose by 30 points to the Tennessee Titans at their own place. So that, if you wanted to call that upset, you could. But for the most part, it was a pretty good weekend, pretty good Sunday of football. Right now, Saints are down 20-10, middle of the third quarter, down to a feisty Houston team. So 20-10 right now, Saints are down to Houston in the Superdome. As far as the college football went, a couple of statement games, and you had a team that looked like they're going to be a problem in the SEC. The LSU, the game of the weekend was that without question LSU and Texas. Both teams are legit championship caliber teams, playoff teams. LSU can win the whole thing. I don't think Texas' defense is good enough. They're a classic Big 12 team. They can score a zillion points, but they can't stop anybody. But that was a fun game to watch. LSU, for the first time since maybe Jamarcus Russell, has a quarterback who is fearless, has a quarterback who can challenge Alabama. LSU is going to be a problem in the SEC West. That is a legit championship team. Now, their defense might not be on the same level as it has been in the past couple of years, but you know what? It doesn't need to be. Because when you could put up 45 at Texas with that quarterback, you don't need to have a lockdown defense. That was Joe Burrow put on the show, 471 yards passing, 4 touchdowns. Ellinger put on the show as well, played great as well. Texas has a lot of weapons on the outside with their receivers, but that was all about LSU and about the quarterback. And I'm telling you right now, just fun game to watch. You had 39 fourth quarter points, two teams going back and forth. I felt like the defenses got tired, especially in the fourth quarter, but a great game to watch. But this to me was about LSU finally having a offense that resembles something of the 21st century, and give the coaching staff credit for going out to getting guys from New Orleans. So he deserves a lot of credit from that standpoint, not just depending on special teams and defense. And again, LSU will be the number one contender for Alabama coming out the SEC West, even better than Auburn. Maryland played well. Maryland makes a bit of a statement against Syracuse, 63-20. Maryland scored 142 points in their first two games, so we'll see how long they can keep that up. They're now ranked 21st. Michigan was embarrassing against Army, almost losing out to Army at home. Michigan, Michigan will be a 9-10 win team, but they're not even they won't be a playoff contender from my standpoint. I just don't like the way they just have no offense. They're still having they still have issues with the quarterback. Still turn over the ball way too much. Offensive line is suspect in terms of pass protection. Clemson absolutely toyed with Texas A&M, and I think A&M is a good team. I think they're a very good team. But Clemson right now is playing at another level. When you can win games going away, when you don't play your A game, that just lets you know where you're at right now. So Clemson 24-10. It didn't feel like the game didn't even feel like it was that close, to be honest with you. It really didn't. You never thought Clemson was in any danger, and they were never in danger of losing that game. So a good weekend of college football. Again, big picture is about LSU being another challenger for the Alabama Crimson Tide out of the SEC. Now, I can say there are probably two legit challengers. Auburn, well, three. I can say three. Auburn's a challenger because with that defense. So I'll say, in order, I would say Georgia, LSU, and Auburn will be the main challengers to the Alabama Crimson Tide. Crimson Tide coming out of the SEC. As far as the tennis goes, you had two legends coming up on opposite ends of the spectrum. First, we'll go with the winner in terms of Nadal. That was probably one of the best matches, one of the gutsiest matches I've ever seen Rafael Nadal play. The best match I saw Nadal play was when he destroyed Federer in 2008 French Open, right before the Wimbledon Classic. That's considered the greatest of all time. And this was apex Federer. It's the best match I've ever seen him play. This match was his gutsiest because Nadal is probably the greatest front runner in the history of tennis. When Nadal gets on top of you, one set, two sets, it's a wrap. Like you don't guys don't forget about coming back and winning. Guys don't even get sets off Nadal when he jumps ahead. He is the again the best front runner that I've ever seen in the history of tennis. So for him to be up two sets of love, and then have a guy come back to win the next two sets and be even up 1-0 in the fifth set, and then still for him still win the match just shows you that this guy, his heart, even at his age, even with all the wear and tear, that this guy has one of the biggest hearts that the game's ever seen. He is one of the gutsiest fighters that the game has ever seen, along with his talent. And even, again, aesthetically, I don't like watching Nadal play. It can be a grind. I respect, the hell out of him, but aesthetically, I don't like watching him play. But if you're a tennis fan, you had to enjoy that match last night, well over 4 hours. Give Medvedev a lot of credit, and I think Medvedev is that we've been looking for that next young gun tennis player who's going to win some majors. I think Medvedev, once the big three kind of subsides and once the momentum of that, and those guys are closer to the end than what we realize. I think with the injuries, with the award, with the attrition, with the age, the big three might have 1 year left. 1 year left between Federer, Djokovic, and Nadal, and 1 year left in the tank before they kind of go out to pasture, and before some other guys emerge. So Medvedev to me is the next best candidate to win some multiple majors. He will win. I predict that he will win at least one major next year. And right now, you have Nadal right on the heels of Roger Federer with win number 19, Grand Slam number 19. Again, I think the big three has 1 year left in them. As far as I think whoever out of those three is, again, now there's no way Djokovic is winning four majors. So I would say out of Federer and Nadal, whoever is leading after the 2020 season will finish with the all-time leader in Grand Slam majors. I don't think Djokovic is catching Federer or Nadal, to be honest with you. I'm not sure Djokovic has three majors left in him. I mean, he said again, those guys, all three of them, have a ton of mileage on that tread. Those guys are grinded out guys. Those guys who, you know, Federer probably, at this point in his career, probably manages his schedule the best. Those other two guys are grinded out players. So when Federer, when Nadal and Djokovic fall off, the wheels are going to completely come off because those guys they go 100 miles an hour every match. They don't have any, there's no such thing as cruise control with those two guys. So I think whoever out of Federer and Nadal, whoever can finish with the most majors next year, as in the lead next year, I think that will, they will be the all-time leader, moving forward. But I think forever. I don't think anybody's breaking that record. No, I don't see anybody exceeding 20 plus majors. As far as Serena goes, listen, I don't think you can knock Serena. Serena is 37 years old, and unlike the men's tennis, there are a number of women's players who are Grand Slam caliber players. This, Bianca Andreescu is going to be the one player in the world before long. She's going to win multiple majors. She will win anywhere from 8 to 10 majors easily. There are too many talented top. The women's game is too top heavy for Serena to win another major. I don't think Serena's going to win another major, to be honest with you. And you can attribute it to, number one, age. You can attribute to it to mainly how many other top players that are capable of winning Grand Slams. Osaka, Kerber, Halep. I mean, there are about three or four. There are about at least five that are capable of winning majors. This is not even Serena's fault. This is what is supposed to happen in tennis. You know, all time greats. They get older. You have a young generation comes in and takes over. What you see in men's tennis with the big three in this generation is just something that's unprecedented and something that you will never see again. And part of it is because you just haven't had any young players step up to the plate. Because in the history of tennis, it's been simple. The young has pushed out the old. It's always been like that up until this point, up until this last 10 years, with what Federer, Djokovic, and Nadal have done. Like really, Federer, Djokovic, and Nadal have pushed their primes 5 years, legitimately 5 to 7 years past what they should be. To be honest with you. So those guys, these younger players, should have been taking over the sport in men's tennis. Like we should be talking about Zverev and Medvedev and some of these other guys that should have been took over the sport. Dimitrov, to name, there was a guy, I forgot his name, the American player. Last name is Young, but he ended up being a flop. That is absolutely happening with the women's game. There are a number of young, talented women who are just at this point have no fear of Serena. And you see Andrews, you see this 19 years old. She hits the ball just as hard as Serena does. She really does. I've never seen anybody handle Serena's serve the way this young lady handles Serena's serve or returns Serena's serve. Never, and ever. So, Serena fought, came back from 5-2 in that last set. Played as hard as she can play, but just at this point, this Mother Nature, Father Time are undefeated, and I don't see Serena winning another major. I just don't. And she's lost these finals in straight sets. These last 4 or 5 finals, the Grand Slam finals, she's lost in straight sets. That's going to wrap it up for this latest edition of the Real Deal Podcast. As always, we are on iTunes, apple.com. Look up Real Deal Podcast. I'll put this podcast also on Blog Talk Radio later on tonight. As always, this is season 12 of the Real Deal Podcast. With Cyril Gerald-Quinn, telling it like it is with no apologies. Thanks for listening. I'm out.